As we come to this week's EuroSermon in the Holy Mystery box, we've been using it over the last while to introduce us to some of the great stories in the Old Testament. I hope you have enjoyed them each week. I certainly have enjoyed reading them and remembering them from a child and then learning from them as an adult as well. And so this is the last one in the series. Next week we're back to a more traditional EuroSermon and a more traditional sermon. So let's see what I have bought in the Holy Mystery box today. I wonder what is inside. Well, let's have a look and see what it is. Well, today I have bought with me something that we generally just use during the summer, although maybe we got to use it this week. There was some fantastic early autumn weather. And of course, I'm talking about something that we only use, which is sun cream. Hadn't had a bad summer, but when the sun is out and the sun is shining, it's really important that we don't go out in the sun and just let it burn our skin, because that can have dangers down the road. All sorts of problems can happen when we don't look after our skin or don't protect it from the sun, because some of the UV rays, the rays that come from the sun, can be very damaging. So what we do is we get some of this sun cream, and this one is factor 50. So that means it's very strong. We put it on our hand and then we rub it on our face. Sometimes it gets in our mouth and it doesn't taste very nice. And then we rub it on our arms, or we rub it over our body if it's out in the sun. And the good thing about this is that it protects us. It means we don't get burnt from the sun, but it also protects us from all those rays which don't do our skin very well. It's lovely to have hot weather, but it's lovely to be protected. So that's what we learn from this EuroSermon purchase. Something about protection, something about something hot, whatever. So let's see what it is as we come to this week's reading from the Old Testament about someone called Daniel and his 3 friends. So our reading is from Daniel chapters 1 to 3. After Jerusalem was destroyed, a young man named Daniel was one of the prisoners taken to Babylon. There the great king Nebuchadnezzar chose Daniel and his 3 best friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, to go to a special school. The boys were given food and wine used in the worship of Babylon's god. "Please excuse us from eating this food," they said. "If it makes you weak and sick, the king will punish me," said their teacher. "Give us just vegetables and water for 10 days, said Daniel. "We'll be fine. You'll see." Soon Daniel and his friends had become the best students. Well, King Nebuchadnezzar decided to build a huge statue. "When the band plays," he declared, "everyone must bow to the statue. Those who don't will be thrown into a blazing hot fire." The band played, and everyone bowed to the king's statue. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused to bow. "Respect me," yelled the king, "unless you want to be thrown into the flames." "O king, even if you put us in the fire, God will protect us," said the young men. "We will never worship anyone but God. We will not bow to your statue." "Make the fire 7 times hotter," shouted the angry king. "Then throw these 3 men in the flames." The soldiers obeyed. They slung the 3 men in. Nebuchadnezzar watched in amazement. "We put 3 men in the fire," he said. "Now I see 4 men in the flames, and they don't seem to be hurt. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, called the king. Come out of the fire. The 3 men stepped out unharmed. Their hair wasn't even singed. Nebuchadnezzar was astonished. Let us worship the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, he said. Part 2 of our reading is Daniel 4-6. Years later, Nebuchadnezzar's son Belshazzar became king of Babylon. One day he held a great party. Bring out the gold cups we took from the temple in Jerusalem, he ordered. Then Belshazzar drank wine from the holy cups. All of a sudden, he saw a mysterious hand writing in a foreign language on the wall of the palace. Belshazzar was very scared. Send for Daniel, said the queen. His God will be able to explain the writing. Daniel came quickly. God says you are unfit to rule, said Daniel. Enemies will capture your kingdom. That very night, the Persian army captured Babylon. Belshazzar was killed. Darius the Great now became king. He chose Daniel as one of his top advisors. The king's other advisors grew jealous of Daniel. Why did the king always listen to him? They tried hard to find some fault in Daniel, but Daniel never did anything wrong. The king could always trust him. Every morning, every lunchtime, and every night, Daniel prayed to the living God. The jealous advisors hatched a plot against Daniel. "O King Darius," they said, "you only are wise and powerful. Make a new law saying that no one must pray to anyone except you. If anyone disobeys, he will be thrown into a pit of lions. Write out this new law for me," Darius told his advisors. Then trumpeters announced the new law throughout his kingdom. No one must pray to anyone except King Darius. Now the jealous advisors hid outside Daniel's house. They saw him kneel and pray to God, just as he did every day. They rushed back to King Darius. "Daniel is still praying to his God," they hissed. "Oh dear," said Darius the Great. He was really sorry because he respected Daniel a lot. "Daniel must be thrown into the lion's pit," demanded the advisors. The foolish king had to agree. Darius' soldiers threw Daniel into the pit of lions. The king didn't sleep that night. He couldn't stop thinking of poor Daniel and the lions. When morning came, Darius hurried to the pit. "Daniel," he shouted, "are you all right?" To his astonishment, Daniel replied, "I'm fine, not a scratch." Then he explained, God sent an angel to shut the lions' mouths. "Get Daniel out now," shouted Darius. When Daniel had been released from the pit, Darius ordered, "Go arrest those wicked advisors who trapped Daniel. From today, everyone must respect Daniel's God," said Darius. "He is the living God. He saved Daniel from the lions. This is the law of the Medes and Persians. It cannot be changed." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, I wonder, did you enjoy that reading? I always loved that reading as a young boy, as I learnt it in Sunday school or in church or read it at home. And it's a great story, isn't it? It's a story about Daniel and about his 3 friends called Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. Did you remember those names? And they are living in a foreign land called Babylon. And in that land, they worship another god, which is a kind of made-up god. And they stay faithful to their God, the living God, the God that we still worship today. And we know that that doesn't go well for them, that there's all sorts of rules brought in that they have to worship this other God. And did you notice what they did? They said, no, we follow the living God and we are going to stand up for who and what we believe. And they find themselves in a horrible situation, don't they? The three friends, Meshach, Shadrach and Abednego, they find themselves thrown into a big fiery furnace. And God protects them. God is with them. Amazingly, he sends an angel to be with them. And we know that not even a hair on their head is singed. And then when we read later on, we read of Daniel. And Daniel, again, is thrown into a pit of lions. Not very nice. He's there overnight. And God protects him. And it's an amazing two stories. So what do we learn from them? Well, let's remind ourselves. So we talk about protection and we talk about God being with us using this EuroSermon purchase. I suppose we see again, as we've seen each story that we've read, we've seen the faithfulness of someone who continues to follow God, and we're called to follow God. We're called to be faithful to him. But we can see that that can be hard. It was really hard for Daniel, for Meshach, Shadrach and Abednego, because they had to say, no, this is who we worship, and we're not going to compromise that. And you know, we call ourselves a follower of Jesus. We're called to be faithful to Jesus, faithful to God, and not compromise that. And yet there's lots of things in our world would take us away from our faith. And we've got to show courage to say, no, this is what is important to me. And of course, as we do that, as we show that courage, like those in our story today, we know that God is with us. That's something we've learned a couple of times. We know that God is with us. So we've got to stand firm. We've got to stand up for who we believe. And the lovely thing about the story is when they do that, others see and hear about the living God. And they begin to worship that living God too. And that's part of who we are as Christians. We are to stand up for who we believe in our words, in our deeds, in our actions, so that many people might see God in us, and I pray might turn and follow him. So that's another great story that we've learned. Maybe you might take time to read it today for yourself and to see how God is speaking to you through that wonderful story. We join together in the song, I May Live in a Great Big City.
I may live in a tower tall, I may live in the countryside, I may live by the sea. But wherever I live, I know that Jesus also lives with me. But wherever I live, I know Jesus lives with me. I may live in a great big city, I may live in a village small, I may live in a tiny house, I may I may